Hi there, and welcome to Plone Day 2025. Now we're going to have a more technical presentation. This is going to be mostly focused on people that build CMS at scale, that go and implement their own CMS solutions. Usually, if you have a company and you build the same site over and over and over and over and over again, for vertical or for some group of customers, or you need to basically redo. Earlier today, at the World Plone Day in Brasilia, we heard about this university in Brazil, the UFSCar, Universidade Federal de São Carlos. They have 400 Plone sites built just for their university. And this is what I mean with building at scale. If you need to build 5, 10, it's already enough for you to go and jump and try to implement a distribution. We are going to talk a bit more about that today. Okay, so without more delay, let me talk about Plone Distributions, or how our good and old friend Products.CMFPlone became our generation's content management framework, the solution to build new content management systems, right? So let's start. First thing is, let's define what is a Plone distribution. And disclaimer, if you compare this with what I've done, I believe a year ago at World Plone Day, it's going to be slightly different. For many reasons, I'm going to explain why, but let's start. First thing is, what is a distribution? It's basically a contract to create a new instance of a Plone site. If I'm talking Plone site, it's basically the Python object that hosts your portal. But you can even change and subclass Plone site and implement something else. I'm not diving into that, but let's start with, it's a Plone site, right? First thing is, a distribution should control dependencies and versions of everything it relies on. It should provide the full example content. So far, so good. Some use cases, you're basically creating a new CMS project, but you're not creating a CMS project that's going to be used only for one client. The idea is for you to have your factory of sites, or it's a basis for a software as a service offering of a Plone-powered backend or targeting a vertical. We have already some pretty well-known distributions, even though not all of them use the what we have in terms of architecture these days. But what I want to tell you, the most successful Plone companies these days, they are actually not selling Plone. And in the end, I have no idea why people have this strange obsession. But I'm going to sell Plone. Actually, you sell a solution to a problem, or a solution to a vertical, or a solution to a client. You do not comment, hey, we offer you Plone. I have no idea what you need. Actually, it's the other way around. You go hear their needs, and then, okay, I have like a CMS solution for you. That's what divides, for instance, Plone from other CMSs. People use WordPress, for instance, because it's WordPress, and I install WordPress, and that's it. For Plone, the most successful Plone stories I know are built not on top of plain Plone, but they have very strong opinions about how the content should be organized, which content type should be there, and so on and so forth. That's the important thing for us to know. And then, this is where I beg you a pardon and apologize for doing that. And Philip, sorry for that. But not everything is a distribution, right? We ship Plone Today, if you install Plone, like one of the base images, you're going to have two distributions, Volto and Plone Classic. They are actually a public website, one with a Node, a JavaScript Node React frontend, and the other one using server-side Python template solution. But they're basically offering you a site. On top of that, there are many other successful Plone distributions. But what is not a distribution? Something that I'm going to use once. For instance, I'm going to create I'm developing a project for one customer, and it's going to be used only for this customer. This is not a distribution. And probably you should not try to generalize something early on. So you build the site for this client. And then if a second client comes with the same requirements, you go and turn the first project into a distribution, and then you have your factory of sites for this specific segment of vertical. For instance, if you're just deploying for a client, forget about it. For instance, the site for datacom.org, it's a NGO, perfect, but it's a site. It's not a factory for NGO sites. And I'm giving you this example because it's one site contained by my company. Also, a package providing demo content for a specific add-on or even for Plone, it's not and should not be a distribution. I know a year ago I was claiming, oh, look, demo.plone.org is amazing, it's a distribution. Yeah, it should not. Especially because now with Plone 6.1, we have export import, Plone export import in core, meaning you can easily go get your add-on. For instance, one good example is the main branch of Voltolite team. We used to have something called kitconcept.voltolite team that was a Python package that was a distribution used to showcase the content you get with Voltolite team. We decided now to go to a monorepo approach for many reasons, but we are monorepo now for Voltolite team, and this package is not a distribution anymore. It's simply a simple backend add-on with some behaviors that you can enable or disable if you want, and with a profile for demo content. In the end, that's the approach we should have for demo sites and for demo of any add-on. You have a profile, a generic setup profile that's going to be used as demo there. Okay, it's quite easy to get your add-on, create example content. You go through the command line Plone exporter, dump that into a specific location. If you're using Plone cookie Plone, the latest cookie Plone, I believe we already have even the make update example content available, so it's there, it's easy. Okay. And now some opinions and some strong opinions. My vision for distribution. I am the person pushing the community to consider distribution a first-class citizen in the Plone world since 2014. The first time I talked about that was in Bristol at the Plone conference there. So I had the opportunity to think about it and review what other people were doing already, and now I have a strong vision, even though it was hard to make it work. First thing is, distribution is not an add-on. I'm not testing a distribution against Plone 5, 5.1, 6, 6.1, 6.2. A distribution has specific version of Plone in mind because you need to maintain that. You do not want to put it on the wild and see what happens. A distribution is basically your CMS offering. That being said, for instance, if I have a distribution and going back in time, We have two very successful distributions here in Brazil, Portal Padrão and Portal Modelo. Among them, we're talking about 2,000 or more public websites live today. Both of them are using Plone 4, and they have a specific version of Plone 4. Portal Modelo, I believe, is Plone 4.3.6. Portal Padrão, the latest version is Plone 4.3.16 or something. Because that's the way you can support people, right? That's your job as a maintainer for a distribution. A distribution needs to provide its own constraints, and that's something that gets a little complex these days. Because if my distribution only works with Products.CMFPlone version 6.1.1, I start with the base constraints of Plone's Products.CMFPlone 6.1.1. But if my product needs a latest version of Plone distribution or a latest version of Plone Voto or Plone REST API, the constraints of Products.CMFPlone are not valid anymore. So I need to provide my own that get that one as basis, and I add my specific versions on top of it. And also, any projects I build based on this distribution should point to my constraints for this, to distribution constraints, not to Products.CMFPlone. Because in the end, what you want is someone starting a new project based on your distribution and having everything working. You do not want to start debugging a crazy matrix of versions, right? This is the type of stuff you need to care about when you have an add-on that's going to be using Plone or Voto or whatever, and many versions. You test against Python 12, 3.12, 3.13, Plone 6, 6.1, and so on and so forth, okay? And then more strong opinions and more controversial ones, step aside CMFPlone. This is not a reality today for the existing distributions we have, and I'm mentioning here Voto, Classic UI, and for instance, Kit Concept Intranet, that are three prime case examples. But a distribution should have the spotlight and the burdens of being the main thing, because you're not installing Plone anymore. You are already putting the flavor of your vision of your company or your decisions on top of Plone. For quite a long time, if I wanted, and this is a true story, there's one thing that really, really annoys me in any project I start with Plone, is the fact that Plone comes with a bunch of workflows. 99.999% of the time, I do not use anything other than simple publication workflow or eventually one state workflow, right? But when I install Plone, I have all these workflows. I do not have an interface in Voto these days to change the workflow or to modify and say, oh, we are going to have a placeful workflow from here and there. We do not have that. But when I go and I try to create a collection in Classic UI or a listing block in Voto, and I say, oh, the state should be one of, and it lists me a bunch of states that are not being used, are not going to be used, are just plain confusing, right? So it's a simple thing. It's usability. I do not need 40 types, 40 different workflows. It's not that much, but I do not need all those workflows. I need just the simple ones or the ones I want to provide to my end user. Oh, there's a solution for that. You start with whatever Plone installs, and then you go and remove. So your profile, the installation profile for your distribution, basically starts cleaning up things that Plone installs for you. And same thing goes to, for instance, to all content types. Voto, by the way, does not has a use for folder or collection, right? And what it does is simply goes and flags these two content types as not edible, but they are there, right? And they appear in some vocabularies, which is a pain in the ass, and so on and so forth. Imagine the following crazy distribution that's just to replace Google Photos. I create a distribution that has two content types: a folderish to organize stuff. Let's give a name album, and an image. I really don't care about news item. I really don't care about page. I really don't care about event. I care only about those two things. This is something that a distribution should provide. You should provide exactly what your target audience needs. Also, a distribution should take care of upgrades. Ideally, the migration tool should be managed by the distribution, not by CMFPlone, because the user that installed my distribution, for instance, the user that installs Portal Padrão or Portal Modelo or Crave or IO Comune or Kit Concept Internet, even though they know we have Plone, it's powered by Plone, they do not want to have to go to their when they go to the control panel. Oh, you have an upgrade. It's the upgrade of Plone for Plone, and then they need to go to your add-on or your distribution profile, and oh, let's also upgrade this. Of course, if you have a support contract, you do that for them, but it's kind of annoying. The migration tool it's amazing. It was built. It's interesting because it has a parameter called default profile that could be changed, but it's used everywhere. So yeah. Also, and then this is also controversial because not everyone agrees with that, but I'm strongly opinionated that the generic setup base profile should be something other than Products.CMFPlone. As I said, I really do not want to have all those workflows. I do not want to install add-ons, some add-ons that Plone installs. I want to have control of that. I want that every time there is a new version of my distribution, it's my base profile that needs to take care of all the upgrades and reinstall everything and look through the dependencies and so on and so forth, right? Not just trust on Products.CMFPlone and see what happens. As I mentioned here, workflows, portlets, type, things you do not need should not be there. You should simply not install. For instance, I was playing the other day where I do not need to install Plone app content types and then Plone.Voto to get the base types I need in my project. I should have all of them listed in my base profile, right? And I believe Jens Klein also mentioned something like that. And if I'm misquoting you, Jens, sorry about that. I know it's late in Europe, but sorry. If you still want to use Products.CMFPlone as the default, your distribution should be responsible for running the upgrade steps. Right now, Plone.Voto and Plone.ClassQI, they use Products.CMFPlone and they require Products.CMFPlone. Maybe in the future, we are going to have a package named Voto, like that's going to be a distribution, and that package will have exactly what the Voto developers, the people behind Voto, or the people behind ClassQI, they have in mind for that. And they would have their own base profile. Of course, talking is cheap, it's easy, and what should we do? So from vision to reality, for quite some time, people that know me are aware that I've been working on distribution for Brazil. it's going to be, we have this term in here, it's called tropicalização. It's when you get some technology from abroad and basically make it work in Brazil. In our case, we are trying to bring Portal Padrão and Portal Modelo from Plone 4.3 to the latest Plone, and try to bring all the existing sites with us. So the first thing is Portal Brasil, and then there's an asterisk in here because you're going to understand the concept. It's the CMS for Brazilian needs. It's the evolution of two very successful distributions, Portal Modelo. Just to give you an example, Portal Modelo, it's 18, almost 19 years old now. The first version was born back in 2006, Plone 2.5, and they still have like 13 or 1400 sites running with this, right, in their infrastructure. Also, other legislative chambers use that, hosted, self-hosted, and so on and so forth. So it's huge. And they're still using Plone 4.3. And Portal Padrão, that was a solution developed initially in 2012. And that's used by hundreds of sites in Brazil. And it was like the first step to GovBR, now completely maintained by our good friends of Serco. But Portal Padrão was built, and there are many universities using it, and there are many govern-related entities using it, so it's there. Our idea is that each flavor of Portal Brasil will target a specific vertical. So first one that we released last year was Portal Brasil Intranet. It's an intranet. It's quite similar to key concept intranet to a certain point. Has strong different opinions because different market, but it's an intranet. You can download, install, and use it. Also, we go for Portal Modelo. We are going to keep using the brand Portal Modelo, but Portal Modelo is also known as Portal Brasil Legislativo because we're talking about legislative chambers, House of Representatives, and so on and so forth. And the next one on the pipeline is called Portal Brasil Educação. And by the way, I'm talking about internet in Portal Modelo because they already have released versions. I'm going to show you. And the next one is Educação. That's basically, remember Plone Edu? That's it. We are coming with a solution for that. The whole idea is when I have different flavors of distribution, but I also have, I need to share a code base. How do we share this code base? We tried to, the first attempt to do that was back in 2023. We had a sprint, Cerrado sprint, trying to make this a reality. Back then, Plone.Distribution was like 2 months old. It was very green. It was not battle tested, so it was kind of hard. We tried, we had some opinions, and those opinions changed, and was not working. Back last year, we were able to get Portal Brasil Internet out of the door, and now we found a decent architecture that starts with Portal Brasil Core. Portal Brasil Core is a monorepo with a Python backend, a Python package backend, portalbrasil.core, that has a base profile, that has a subclass migration tool, and that was hard to get it done for many, many reasons, but right now it works. Has add system endpoint to report the versions of everything I'm using, and so on and so forth. Has the base behaviors that are derived from VLT, Votalite team. Things like change the logo, or add links to the footer, or add logos or images to the footer, or something that we're going to release soon, the Plone Voto network block that you list the networks you have for your site or for your organization, like the social network, the links. We have a behavior right now in Portal Brasil Core that basically does that. You go and add everything. And we have the node package, Portal Brasil/core, where you're going to load the common dependencies like vote form support, vote alike team, anything that's at Plone Gov VR, like PR widgets, or the network block, and so on and so forth. And some basic customizations like the header, footer, and the versions overview component that's used on the control panel. Besides that, we also provide 2 container images for the backend. It's core-builder, core-prod that are the UV. It's the amazing Python packaging solution we have these days. So these are Docker images based in UV with their best practices and so on and so forth. And these images are going to be used by each distribution, right? Also, each distribution will require the base package. And here I'm giving you the example for Portal Brasil Intranet. And that's one important thing. Whoever watched my presentation during Bucharest Sprint, we were talking about something called Plone Repo Helper to make a release of monorepo packages in a monorepo easier. That was renamed as Repo Plone. Naming is hard, we know, but Repo Plone basically controls this. Portal Brasil Intranet is a Python package that uses PyProject Tomo. It's managed with UV. It means you use UV sync to create your environment and sync all dependencies and so on and so forth. In the project dependencies, you have portalbrasil.core and the specific version, and that's important. There's no mention to Products.CMFPlone in there because I believe Products.CMFPlone is going to be managed by Portal Brasil Core. And also we have in the 2UV section of PyProject.tomo something called constraint dependencies. That's going to have all the pinnings required by Portal Brasil Core. That, by the way, are all the pinnings required by Plone 611. Plus some upgrades we do for distribution or REST API, I think. And it's consolidated in one place. Because when I want to build my project on top of Portal Brasil Intranet, I know where to look for the constraints, right? And Moritz, I would love to discuss that in depth because at some point I was considering publishing a TXT file with the constraints on this.plone.org, but the way UV handles constraint would be kind of cumbersome to maintain, and that's why I fall back to having everything on PyProject.tomo, just explaining the reasoning. And David Glick and myself, we've been researching a lot to see how we can solve that. Small digression here. I know of 2 projects that have so complex dependencies, dependency graph that they need to, when you do, for instance, in the old days, you do a pip install something, you need to clearly specify a constraints file, otherwise it's nightmare. The first one is, of course, Plone, Zope and so on, but let's talk about Plone. And the second one is Apache Airflow. That being said, there are not that many projects that when you try to install it, they will require a shitload of different packages and so on and so forth. And that's why we need to find our own solution. Of course, we could try to put everything inside the same package, right? No, that's a terrible idea because First thing, eggs are great, packages are great, namespaces are great. We love that and we use. Also, figuration part, coming back, talking about the front end. We have Portal Brasil at Portal Brasil /internet that requires /Portal Brasil /core at Portal Brasil /core. In a specific version, it's going to be on package.json. And in this package.json, I only add the dependencies that are required by the internet distribution, but not by core. For instance, an internet distribution requires something crazy. Oh, not so crazy, but the Voto bookmark and collective bookmark, or the taxonomy, and both of them are maintained by Katya. Thank you, Katya. So I add those dependencies in here. But Portal at Portal Brasil /core has all the other dependencies like Portal iTeam, like the EA add-ons and stuff like that. Okay. Now I'm going to be brave and I'm going to try to show you some code. I'm not going to do a live demo because it's way too much, but during the following weeks, I plan to give you on Plone hands-on, I plan to introduce how we are using Plone. But now I'm going to show you the basic stuff in here. One step, and let me go here. Ta-da! This is the organization. We have all the repositories for Portal Brasil, right? It's a new organization. It has some repositories. Let's forget about the one named tasks or the .github. They are basically for management only. In here, we have core, that are the base components. Let me show you here. It's a monorepo. It looks like it was created with cookie Plone because it was. And using cookie Plone templates, we still need to improve the text. We plan to have everything in Portuguese in here. One of the reasons behind also Portal Brasil is to lower the entry barrier for new contributions for people that are not English speakers, or they are kind of shy English speakers. So this lowers the entry barrier for new open source contributions. So in here, we are going to have something called a file called repository.toml that's used by Plone. Let me increase this a bit. Plone is going to look here to say, okay, what's the name of this repository, if it's managed by UV or not, because that's the way we basically control dependencies. Where's the main change log? Where's the main version txt, if we have a Docker Compose or not? Then if I have a top level news folder to be used with Tom Cryer, for instance, I want to have in my change log a separate section for things that were changed in the infrastructure, like GitHub Actions or even documentation, not related to backend, not related to frontend. It goes in here. And then I have backend, and I tell you, oh, the package of backend is this one, the path for backend is this one, the path for frontend is this one. I have a backend package in here. The name is portalbrasil.core. The path is backend. The changelog is in here. Tom Cryer settings, you should be looking at the PyProject Toml. And take a look. The base package in here is Products.CMFPlone, meaning portalbrasil.core is the package where I say this is this version of Brasil Core points to Products.CMFPlone. And we have the same settings here for front-end package. Also, one thing I wanted to share is there's this flag in here saying publish or not. because I use also Plone to make releases of projects, internal projects I do for my clients, and I do not want their packages to be published on PyPI or NPM. Okay, so we start with this. I'm going to take a look at the backend. So backend, it's a REPL. There's no mixdev, a mixini file here. We use REPL use mixdev as a dependency to parse the constraints because that's nicely done. But everything lands up in PyProject. And we also have a uv.lock file. So we have a log file with all the versions here. And in here, I have pyproject.toml. I use Hatch and Hatchling to make the build of this is not setup tools, which kind of create problems, used to create problems to build out users, but our good release manager, Moritz, seems to have found a solution for that. So I have the whole package configuration here, right? The version, it's in here. Let me see, it's 3.12. And in here, I'm basically saying, oh, this is a Plone. Actually, it's listed as an add-on because no better way, this is not a distribution. Versions I support and the dependencies. See in here, Products.CMFPlone 6.1.1, products distribution 3.1.2. Right, and BR fields and PloneGov BR 1.0.0 alpha 3. And then in here, I go down a bit. I'm going to have the dependency groups. I used that to decide what to install. So in here, we have PyTest, and we have PyTest Plone in a newer version than the one that's pinned by Plone 6.1.1. And we have in here the list of dependencies, the constraint dependencies that we inherit for Plone. We also look into the things we manually pin. For instance, when I say PyTest Plone is 1.0.0 alpha 1, it's going to override the pinning for the pinning that comes from Plone, right? And this is it. This is my base distribution, my base code base. This in here has some code, and the thing I want to share is the fact that due to two open issues on Products.CMFPlone that I opened today after I figure out how to solve them. One is I have a factory in here that also has the same things that exist in Plone because I have a base profile here. But I had to override the add site to be able to pass the profile ID I want to the Plone distribution mechanism. And the second thing is we have a migration to subclassing here. I kind of added some types and clean it up. In here, it's still hard-coded, but the idea is to backport this to the Products.CMFPlone migration to having these two attributes where you can, during installation, you basically say, okay, these are the things we are going to use, okay? And then versions and so on and so forth. Let me go back. And then when I have this, and I have in here, if we come to the front end, we have my package for the front end here. Portal Brasil core, the version component is base. So in here I have all the dependencies I want. So Voto Light Theme in this version, Voto Social Blocks in this version, BR widgets, network block, Voto Velibras, image crop widget, PDF block. And by the way, if you maintain any of those, I am really thankful to you. And of course, I also have in here some configurations like some settings. Portals in Brazil, they're going to be in Portuguese, right? Also, some default ratios for the image crop, and installation of the VLibras component, and the API expanders using the amazing new inherit endpoint with the behaviors I want to be inherited. Those are defined right now in Plone, in the Plone site content type, right? But then this is the core package, and I did not show you, but we have the container images in here, we have the packages, and repo Plone actually does that for you. I'm grateful for Victor to implementing this in repo Plone. But now I go back in here to and I go to intranet. It's one of the distributions. So release 100 beta 3. Same thing, repository.toml, that's used by repo Plone. Again, same thing, but this time base package is portalbrasil.core, right? How does it work? When I come to one step up here, pyproject.toml, my dependencies are Plone app discussion. This is not needed by the core. But in here, I need support, OTP, honeypot. These are actually for vote form support, taxonomy bookmarks, and the specific version of core. And of course, I'm using here horse with no namespace. If you have no idea what this is, look at the AMA from David Glick. He saved us. Again, David Glick is our savior, and came up with this solution here for namespaces. And you see constraint dependencies in here includes everything that was in portalbrasil.core, and it's also in here, things that I specify in here. If I do not put a specific version, it's not going to be pinned. If I add a specific version number here, it's going to appear on the constraints. Okay, that's the reasoning behind it. And then, of course, when I install this, it's going to be portalbrasil.core, the base profile, and I'm building on top of that. It's not really hard. To give you an example, I made this release yesterday. I have a change log only of for the changes of the backend, and there's a breaking change to renaming the package as Portal Brasil from Plone Gov BR intranet to portalbrasil.intranet. And in here, I have the change log, a consolidated change log as well, with changes to the backend, to the front end, and to the project, right? Everything is in here. And the older versions we had for the intranet. One important point is repo Plone was born because we had to make releases of the alpha versions of this Portal Brasil intranet, and because of Kit Concept intranet, right? Just explaining why that releaser is the way to go to make releases for Python packages. Everyone loves it. It does everything you need, but it does a little bit more than you need. For instance, it goes and tries to create a tag and modify one change log. In this case, we wanted to have change logs in 3 separate locations, because when I push the Python package to PyPI, I want the change log for the Python package to be there, just the changes to the Python package. Same thing goes for the front end being pushed to npm. And when you arrive here at the repo, you have everything. Okay, that's the reasoning behind it. So as I said, we have in here intranet, and we have also Legislativo that was released yesterday, the first alpha version, and we are following the versioning from the past. Okay, so this is version 4.0. There are the Docker images. There's a quick, if you want to basically go and get this Docker Compose in here, download locally and test, you can. It simply works. Let me see what else. Same thing. Repository.toml here is going to tell you what's the name, versioning, what to change, and the base package is this one. So this kind of solves my problem. One last thing I wanted to show you is this is core, right? It's the core package is running my computer. If I come in here now and say UVX repo clone, and I want to see depths, let's see what it does. Oh, there are 3 different commands. Info, it's going to tell me that the base package is Products.CMFPlone. If I tell check, it's going to tell me the current version is 6.1.1, the latest version is 6.1.1, nothing to do. If I wanted to upgrade, I would basically upgrade, for instance, 6.1.2, and it would upgrade. When I was done and I wanted to make a release, it's basically UVX repo release. There's the change log for you to check everything. We're probably moving that to UVX repo change log. But release, do, and then in here, you can basically say, oh, this is an alpha version, this is a beta version. And we have in here versions. It shows you current versions of the packages. And if I want to see what are my options for the next version. So if when I do the release, I say release, instead of 1.0.0 alpha 5, it's going to be 1.0.0, and it's going to be the same. If I basically say a new alpha, so it's alpha 6 on the back end, and the front end dash alpha .6, because it's semantic versioning. Okay. So this is basically what I wanted to show you in terms of code. This exists today. I'm not talking about the future. This exists today, and we plan to build on top of that, improve that. So what's next for us? For Products.CMFPlone 6.1.2, we plan to backport the fixes. Of course, Moritz needs to be on same page and be happy with this. But I opened 3 issues. One in Plone Distribution. That was an oversight when we created Plone Distribution. That supports specifying a basic generic profile that for whoever wants to take a look at the code base on generic setup is baseline under baseline under context ID during the distribution registration. Same way you do the title, the description, the image, and blah, blah, blah. You're going to have profile ID in there. And then you say it's Products.CMFPlone semicolon Plone. That's going to be the default value to make sure nothing is broken when we implement that. But for my case in here for Portal Brazil, I'm going to simply say, okay, the base profile is portalbrasil.core semicolon base. Okay. this is the lowest hanging fruit. We plan to send a pull request in the next few days. And then we go to there's a bug in the add Plone site at the Products.CMFPlone factory. If you try to add a site in there, even if you pass the profile ID to add Plone site, when it calls the Plone distribution API, it does not pass this value down. So if you try to use the existing create site scripts we have in most places, it's going to be broken. That's a problem we need to fix. And also, the other issue is basically a more generic migration tool that supports you having different base profiles, not only Plone. That's it. And then in terms of features, we are going to implement a cookie Plone template to create new distributions based on this. It's I can tell you that starting from an existing cookie Plone generated project, if you know what you're doing, takes you 10 minutes to convert that to a distribution. Of course, what we are going to do is to make sure everything is in there. Of course, we also need to come up with a solution, and this is going to be worked during Beethoven Sprint. For you, when you decide to start a new using cookie Plone, you say, I want to create my new project. The first question should be, okay, which type of project? Is this a classic UI project? It's a project based on the classic UI distribution. It's a project based on the Volto distribution. It's a project based on which distribution? We want to offer you the many options for you to already have your project created, so we do not duplicate efforts having a different template to create a new project based on a specific distribution. Okay, let me see. I would invite you to take a look at Portal Brasil. It's starting. It's like first steps. Go there, take a look at the code. There's some things personally whoever knows me from the Plone community knows that I've been trying to add typing as much as I can, not because I think typing is amazing, incredible, but it's a way of documenting stuff. And as we know, Steve, we have the godlike figure of Steve Percy doing everything in terms of documentation, but this at least makes it easier for us to generate documentation and to understand what's going on in our code base. That's why, and you can see some attempts. Also, in I believe Portal Brasil core, we have on the core we have some interesting tests using PyTest. It's a good learning opportunity to for those of you that wants to write tests with PyTest. In the end, I would like you to follow me on social networks. I still use the old blue bird from Twitter, now called X, but it's EricoF there. It's EricoF at GitHub. It's Mastodon. It's EricoF at pinews.com.pr. And Blue Sky, which is the one I'm most active these days, is at ericof.com. I thank you for your time. I would love to discuss more about distributions. I'm here, available if you have questions. I'm available online, and I hope you enjoy World Plone Day, and I hope you be part of you keep being part of this amazing community. As my idol would say, live long and prosper.